Funding for this program was provided by Community Trust Bank, serving the communities of North Louisiana, Texas, and Mississippi for more than a century. Community Trust Bank is a proud partner of LPB's Louisiana Legends.
Funding for this program was provided by the Foundation for Excellence in Louisiana Public Broadcasting.
Pennsylvania native Richard Zuschlag came to Lafayette in 1970 as a communications engineer for Westinghouse, married a Acadian girl, and made Louisiana his home. A graduate of the Capital Institute of Technology, he was a born leader at his best during a crisis. When Lafayette Funeral Homes discontinued their ambulance services due to new federal regulations, he answered the call, co-founding Acadian Ambulance in 1971.
Richard got the print, got TV, got radio to do free PSAs to create this excitement that unless you were a member of this ambulance organization, there would be no ambulance service. Friday at 6 o'clock, people were still lined up at the banks to get this membership. It was quite amazing.
Richard Zehnder, in my judgment, is an example for so many of us. Richard came to the Lafayette community and plunged himself wholly and wholeheartedly into the endeavors of this community, endeavors that would reach out and help the neighbor.
He and my mom taught us the importance of being generous. They've been great role models. They're very generous to the community, to our family, and he's always taught us that there's nothing that we can't obtain, that no goal is unachievable. And I think that's been really important to my two brothers and I, to shoot for the moon.
Seriously, Richard is a workaholic. We grew up together, sort of like a fraternity.
What started somewhat by accident has evolved into a corporate family of nearly 3,000 employees, caring for more than 1,250 patients every single day. Acadian Company's medical, safety, transportation, and educational services have revolutionized pre-hospital emergency care in Louisiana and beyond, saving countless lives.
He never backs down from a challenge, and he's always surrounded himself with good people that can help him make quick decisions in a hurry. He's very good under the gun and can really turn a situation around in a matter of moments.
Never was that more evident than in the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina.
We basically told them to break the rules. Keep in mind that they had been there for days with no electricity, hot, water on the floors. So it was like, do whatever you can to get them out.
Slashing through red tape, Acadian's heroic staff came to the rescue, constructing makeshift helipads, loading semis with stretchers, using every ounce of energy and ingenuity they had to evacuate thousands.
Richard poured his heart and his company so very much into assisting the poor people of New Orleans who were so devastated, tremendously devastated. And he was so moved by their suffering.
He cares about everyone, from his children to his employees to the people he serves. And I certainly think there are many people whose lives he's saved who would attest to the fact that he is a Louisiana living legend.
Hello, I'm Beth Courtney. Welcome to Louisiana Legends. We've come to Lafayette and the beautiful home of Richard Zuschlag for a conversation that promises to be both poignant and informative. Well, Richard, seeing a bit of your life story, is that a little humbling, or does it make you think, wow, I've come a long way?
Sure does bring back a lot of great memories over the last 40 years.
Well, 40 years now, almost 41 years, Acadian Ambulance has expanded all over the place, Richard. I mean, you're now in Texas as well, right?
You know, Texas is our newest market, and there's a tremendous opportunity for our company, now that it's an ESOP, to be able to have our employees be able to help us expand into those areas. And there's much need for a service like Acadian in the Texas market, so that's our growth area for the next 5 years.
Well, you certainly, as a Pennsylvanian, you've adopted Louisiana, though. We'll let you go to Texas, but we won't let you forget your Cajun heritage now, if you will. Was that a big shock when you first moved down here?
I tell you, Beth, when I first came to Lafayette, it was on July 22nd, 1970. It was the hottest day of the year. And when I got here, I had no air conditioning in my vehicle. And that whole summer was the hottest time of my life. I mean, I still have a hard time dealing with the heat here in Louisiana, but you know, I did fall in love with the people, and I fell in love with the way people work hard, and they seem to learn how to have a good time together. And I love the Cajun food. And when I married the Cajun gal, Elaine from Breaux Bridge, I kept wanting to be a Cajun. And they kept saying, no, you have to be born here in Louisiana to be a Cajun. But I think now they have finally adopted me, and for sure I can call my children Cajuns.
Well, that's absolutely true. I look back on it, though, and you think you began with such a small number of people, hardcore people, right?
You know, I came down here to work with Westinghouse Space and Defense for that first year on a field assignment. And I was supposed to go back up to Baltimore, and I actually got Acadian Ambulance started as a way of staying here in Lafayette. And that first year of ambulance operations, we had just 2 ambulances and 8 Vietnam medics. And that initial core was the group that helped me get this company going. And I'll tell you, people here in Acadiana are very special people. It was not too long before we started to expand into all the neighboring parishes, and the medical society and the physicians were very supportive of our program.
So when you began, you did a remarkable thing. Being in broadcasting, I was always fascinated. I remember you used to have those big telethons. It was sort of like we have in public broadcasting, and you had to sign up to be a member, right?
That's correct. You know, back up in Pennsylvania, I worked my way through college as a part-time disc jockey. I was known as Dick Richards, DR the DJ, on a local radio station back up north of Pittsburgh.
What'd you spin? What kind of records?
Well, I used to do country and western, and at night I would do a symphony hall. So I did all kinds. It was a small radio station. I had to do a little bit of everything. But I'll say that we had an ambulance crisis in Greenville, Pennsylvania, and the people that came in to provide ambulance service used this concept of a subscription ambulance service where they paid $15 a year to be a member of the ambulance company. And the gentleman that started that learned that when he was in World War II over in Belgium. That's where it came from. And it scattered all across northwestern Pennsylvania. So I copied that idea when the funeral homes went out of the business here in Lafayette. And that's how we got started here in Lafayette.
And so you would go on the air and you would tell everyone you have a window of time to sign up.
That's correct. When we first started in 71, we had 10,000 families that joined our subscription program here in Lafayette. And back then, there was no cable TV. There was only 2 Lafayette TV channels, and everybody watched those 2 channels. And I was fortunate enough to have both of them be very supportive as public service announcements the first 2 years to get enough people to subscribe so we could have an ambulance company here in Lafayette. So if you were a member, you didn't pay anything if you used the service. And if you weren't a member back in the 70s, you paid like $100 for an ambulance trip.
Wow, and you now have 3,000 employees?
Yeah, almost 4,000 now with our expansion into Texas. So we really have grown. And besides providing what I think is a very good pre-hospital care service, I think we also do a lot to stimulate the economy here in Louisiana with all these good paying jobs. So we're excited that we're part of the community and that we can make a difference between life and death.
You have ambulances, but you also, and you have helicopters. How many helicopters do you have?
We have 8 air ambulance helicopters that we deploy throughout Louisiana. And I must say, if you look across the country, we have the highest volume of first response missions because we're serving such a large rural area. When you look at the type of hunting accidents, the industrial accidents, highway accidents that we respond to, many times that makes a difference between life and death, being able to get the patient back to the appropriate hospital.
Well, I have to move and ask you these questions because I've been wanting to know more and more about it. All of us who lived through Hurricanes Katrina and Rita certainly remember the presence of Acadian Ambulance. And what was that time like for you?
I think that I'm a doer and that I like to do things logistically. And it happened so fast for me that I just automatically compartmentalized each of my departments on who was going to handle the helicopters for the military, who was going to handle the civilian helicopters. We all worked long, long hours, and I was blessed to surround myself with such capable, competent dispatchers and communication people. But what really surprised me is how the people throughout the southern part of the state came and asked us what they could do to help. The mayor of Lafayette put together a cooking team with some 20 people and went out across South Louisiana and set up cooking stations for our employees to see to it that we were fed. The president of the university here in Lafayette opened up the dormitories to house all the people that came in from out of state so that the medics would have a place to sleep and be able to go take a shower. There were so many people that rallied to the cause to help us. It was hard for me to imagine just how many people came to our aid, but when I look back on some of the employees that went for 10 days without a change of clothes, some of them having lost their own homes, it was a very difficult time, but everybody just did what they thought they had to do, and we were very fortunate to have so much help. You know, Beth, even a couple of weeks after this was all over with, I would be sitting around and visiting, debriefing, and I'd find out that medics that I didn't know about had gone to Walmart stores here in Lafayette, bought 100 ironing boards and rolls of duct tape to take to New Orleans because they ran out of backboards so that they could unload patients in that charity hospital, carry them through all that water, and go up 8 flights of stairs on the 2-lane parking garage so that the military could medevac them out and be able to get their lives saved.
You actually even appealed to the First Lady, didn't you, when she came to...
Yes, Laura Bush came to the Acadian Dome, and she came by our communications center with Congressman Bustani. And I gave her a special message asking her to go back to the president and say, you know, our National Guard troops are mainly overseas helping in Iraq, and we really need the real military to come in and be able to help us get these people out of the hospital. Because if you look at it, the first disaster was the hurricane, the second was the flood, and the third one that I was afraid was going to happen, but fortunately it didn't, was people dying inside those hospitals because we didn't get them out in time. And the military came in and helped, and the job got done, and we were fortunate.
Tell us about the babies that were evacuated. I was reading some stories about how babies had to be put in boxes, little, almost like shoe boxes.
You know, it's amazing that he used Kentwood water boxes. There was a whole bunch of them in a closet, and the medic went there and found a whole bunch of extra blankets. So he would put 4 babies in one cardboard box and package them up and give them to the helicopter, because normally those small helicopters could only transport maybe 2 incubators at a time. And so some of those helicopters were taking 12 babies at a time and flying them up to Women's and Children's Hospital in Baton Rouge, some over here to Lafayette. We even had Little Rock, Arkansas Children's Hospital fly down to Alexandria and meet us halfway so we could send some of those young children that were having more problems and needed intensive care unit to be sent up to Arkansas. So people really did come to our rescue. It was amazing to me how well everything did go in the middle of that disaster. And I think a large part of that was because of our communication system. You know, I'm a communications engineer, and I have a backup to the backup to the backup.
A good plan.
Yes, and we used every bit of that in order to be able to talk to our people, and that did, in the end, help us out tremendously because others weren't as fortunate to have that kind of communication system.
Were you shocked that others couldn't communicate as well?
You know, at one point I found that Governor Blanco was receiving written messages on tablet paper that physicians were writing to her from inside the Superdome that the state police were driving to the mansion because they didn't have any communications initially. Now, we helped provide some of those in later days, but that's almost like going back to the Pony Express days. That's how messages were initially getting through. I don't think people realize that once the water came up and the telephone system went underwater so that the central switching station couldn't even switch any landlines or cell phones, I think we may have had 12 parish 911 systems go completely off the air. That really impeded the rescue efforts. And since then, of course, everybody's put in new redundancy systems so that won't happen again.
People talk about government running like a business. And of course it can't really. Government has a role, business has a role. But at this point in time, it appeared to be that entrepreneurs and private business was doing an awful lot to help.
Yes, I think everybody rallied to the cause and did the best they could. I think that the government had trouble responding for a number of different reasons. Forget the politics. I think when you can't communicate with each other, that makes things even that much worse. In other words, it's one thing if you talk and you debate how you're going to do it, but if you can't even talk from time to time, I think that just exasperated already a bad situation.
Well, we certainly seem to have a lot of disasters here in South Louisiana. I mean, were you involved? I remember there was a prison riot at Oakdale in that. Were you all involved with that as well?
Yes, we weren't serving that area, but we received a call from the sheriff up in Allen Parish asking us for help. And we responded up there with the ambulances, and I think we stood by for some 10 or 12 days. And you know, that was the one that made the national news, but there's been a lot of other prison riots from local sheriffs throughout the southern part of the state that we have been involved in. I can remember one over in St. Martin Parish where we were there for almost 14 days on a standoff, and a lot of our equipment was used, including our helicopter, and there was a lot of problems afterwards trying to get reimbursed for that. That's why I remember that one. Okay. And in the end, Senator Mary Landrieu came through for us with a special budget item from Congress to be able to reimburse us. And so oftentimes when we get called into line of duty, we're not always certain how we're going to get reimbursed, but we do what's right for patient care, save lives, knowing that later on, if the state and federal government will come together somehow and find a way to reimburse us.
How long did it take them to reimburse you for all the activities around Katrina and Rita?
We were very blessed. We had gotten an order from the FAA in Dallas to take every means possible to use every helicopter we could locate and every ambulance we could locate to evacuate those hospitals. And about the third day into it, I convinced the people in Dallas with the FAA to send us a fax letter confirming that. So when it was over with, it actually was easier for us to deal with the FAA than to deal with FEMA. They were a little bit more efficient, and we were one of the first ones to get reimbursed. Now, we didn't gouge the government. We marked our rates up about 20 to 25% over normal rates because of all the overtime our people incurred and all of our additional expenses. Many companies charged a lot more than that, and because we kept proper records, FAA, we flew to Dallas, and they were able to reimburse us for our mission, so we were real proud of that.
So where did you spend most of your time? Were you at the control center, and did you sleep very much?
You know, I spent 18 days in a row in the control center with 150 phone lines ringing and a staff of about 45 of us. And we worked around the clock. I averaged about 5 hours sleep a night during that time period. I look back on it as something at the time. I wasn't thinking about stress. I was thinking about how to get things done, how to make sure our people were being fed properly, how to make sure that the ones that had worked for 2 or 3 days could get some sleep and get some new recruits into the area. Of course, I was concerned about their safety. Some of the medical people in those hospitals became so delirious because they had no contact with the outside world that some of them even made up stories in trying to seek additional help to get more people to come to help them inside the hospitals. And I don't feel bad for them for having done it. They were stressed beyond belief. They had people dying in their hands, and they didn't have enough water and food, and they needed help. So they were saying a lot of different things that might not actually be going on just to create a sense of urgency, get more people to come to the hospital. The other thing a lot of people didn't know, that if a hospital had 400 or 500 patients, they had a staff of maybe another 700 or 800 people there taking care of those patients. And each staff member had 1 or 2 relatives or family members there, along with some dogs and cats. So a hospital with 400 or 500 patients ended up with 3,500 people in that building, and they all had to be evacuated. And that's what a lot of people didn't understand. It wasn't just the patients. It was all the rest of the staff members and family members that needed to be evacuated too.
So certainly we have had our share of disasters, as we've been talking about, but on a routine basis, on a weekend in Louisiana, you provide an awful lot of support to sports. Everyone in Louisiana seems to be sports obsessed, but that is another obligation you all take on.
You know, I think it's a blessing that we're able to do this, and our people, for the most part, really enjoy this. It sometimes gets to be a little difficult in the hot summer months, but we do provide ambulance service to all these high school football games, and we do that as a community service. It's important for us to be visible and be there to help in case something does go wrong, and we do it for all the universities and colleges, and now we do it for the professional teams too. And we enjoy being able to provide those kind of services. Louisiana loves to have people go to school and work. When the weekends come, they like to let their hair down and have a good time, and sometimes people have too much of a good time. And it amazes me the kind of accidents that occur in this state on the weekends, with people that drown and with people that get hurt in vehicle accidents, these four-wheeler accidents. So we stay pretty busy on the weekends.
Do you go to the sporting events yourself?
Oftentimes I do. I am a big fan of UL football and also of LSU football. I do not get involved in too many of the other sports. Now and then maybe a baseball game, but I'm a fanatic when it comes to the Saints and LSU football. I really enjoy those outings, and it's a good way to network and mix with other people from across the state.
Well, it sounds like you enjoy your work. Do you relax other than watching sporting events?
Do you know, I am kind of a workaholic. I'm fortunate that my parents, I'm the oldest of four, taught me how to work and work hard. And so I do work a lot, but I enjoy my work. I look forward to going to work every day, and I have found some ways to relax. I love to duck hunt. I take a lot of dignitaries, a lot of employees and family down to my beloved duck camp down in Cameron Parish. I love to attend the sporting events, and I try to play golf, but I'm not very good at that.
You're not good.
No, I'm taking some lessons this summer. I hope to be better this fall.
Well, your parents just celebrated a wedding anniversary, didn't they?
Yes, correct. I snuck up to Pennsylvania unannounced for their 65th wedding anniversary. They're both 85 years old. They're both still okay health-wise, and they come down to visit from time to time, and as a family, my brothers and sisters and I decided to celebrate their anniversary over the 4th of July holiday. But I decided to sneak up unannounced with my wife, and boy, were they excited that we came to see them.
That's wonderful. I know they must be proud of you, and you told them that you were a Louisiana legend, and we're pleased to be able to honor you on that score. But I've often wondered, are people ever trying to get you involved in politics or to get you to run?
Yes. Through the years, people have tried to get me involved, and you know, I think I can do better to help people in this state if I'm not a politician. I think as a business person, I can help work on boards and community foundations to help the state be better. And I've often told people that if I was to run for election, I think I have too many skeletons in my closet, and I don't want any of those to come out and chase after me right now.
And is Zuschlag too tough a name for Louisiana?
Well, you know, when I first got married, my parents were a little bit concerned because my father-in-law, Adley Dupuy in Burbridge, he wanted to change my last name to Zuschlag, L-E-A-U-X. They wanted to call me Richard Zuschlag. And so they were a little concerned about that. But, you know, I am proud of the Cajun heritage. And when I took my in-laws and my parents to Nova Scotia 25 years ago, I found it interesting that not only did a lot of people from Nova Scotia come here to Louisiana, but a number of them also went to Pennsylvania. And I found that to be very interesting, as did my parents. We bought a book, and my mom and dad have read up on all of that, of who came down to Louisiana, who came to Pennsylvania.
That's wonderful. Now, looking out into the future, you're expanding the company. So 5 years from now, what would you say, what's your life going to be like?
If the Lord's willing to allow me to be around 5 years from now, I intend to slow down more and to continue to delegate more. I still love going to work. I spent too much time in my early years working and not enough time with my family. So I have been spending a lot more time in recent years traveling and doing things with the family, and I enjoy making trips like that. We're planning as a family now a trip with the whole extended family over to Europe next year. And those are the things that I'm looking forward to. It's funny how the older we get, our goals change in life. I still love Acadian because it's the passion that I have inside of me. But in my senior years, I want to spend more time not only with the family, but with the grandchildren coming along.
Well, is there any advice you have for somebody out there who's thinking of starting a business or something and saying, gee, here are a couple of key pieces of wisdom I want to share with you?
I think it's very important to do surveys and go out and talk to other respected community leaders. One of the things that I think has helped me is to go ask for a lot of advice. Now, you know, you get a lot of diverse advice, but I've been pretty fortunate to take people's suggestions and comments and put them in the pot like gumbo and stir them up and come out and do what I think is right. I think too often people sit down to see how much money they can make, and then they look for a business. I think you have to go out and find something that's going to serve the best interest of your community and offer the best service that you can, and let the money making come down the road. In other words, I think if I had tried to make money initially, that this program would not have succeeded. Our first 25 years, we were all about providing the best service possible. The money making for us has come in the last 15 years, particularly once we did the ESOP, because when I decided to share what we were doing with the employees, and I might say that was a bill and a law that Russell Long wrote.
Yes.
And before he passed away, he told me that of all the ESOPs in the country, there's around 13,000 of them, that mine fit his legislation the best to allow my partners to exit the business and have their stock go into the accounts of those that are working so hard to make it work.
And one of the, I think the hallmarks too is you have employed a lot of military people who've come out and trying to make the transition back to civilian life as well.
That is correct. Military people, for the most part, are more mature, have served the country well overseas, in some cases here in the United States. And in the beginning, the reason I did that, we had no formal paramedic or EMT training, and the military had trained them to be medics in the service, particularly the ones from the Vietnam War. Those are the ones that gave us the credibility to help us get started. And you know, many of them end up in key positions in our organization.
Well, one of the things I've noticed is a lot of people have stayed with you for a long time, so family included.
You know something? I'm pretty proud that we had our employee meeting several weeks ago, and I gave out all of the awards for 25 years and greater, and there were over 50-some employees that got that award, but there were 5 that got their 40-year pin. I got my 40-year pin last year, but there were 5 more that got theirs this year. And it was emotional for me to be able to share with the rest of the audience what those 5 did through the last 40 years, particularly those early years, to make the company so very successful. I think in our case, loyalty did a lot to help bring us together. They worked hard, and I shared with them, and together we made a great team.
Well, thank you for sharing a little of your time with us, and we appreciate it so much, and congratulations on being a Louisiana legend.
Well, I'm delighted. The Louisiana legend means a lot to me, and I appreciate you taking time to come visit.
And thank you for joining us. We'll be back with another edition of Louisiana Legends. I'm Beth Courtney. Good day.
For a copy of this program, call 1-800-973-7246 or go online to www.lpb.org.
Funding for this program was provided by Community Trust Bank, serving the communities of North Louisiana, Texas, and Mississippi for more than a century. Community Trust Bank is a proud partner of LPB's Louisiana Legends.
Funding for this program was provided by the Foundation for Excellence in Louisiana Public Broadcasting.